graduation at Glenridge High School. My teachers may say that I can't be trusted to finish my homework, but this time I got it. Ladies and gentlemen, parents, teachers, relatives, people we haven't seen in over 5 years but claim some relation to the family of origin. We are here today for one common purpose, to celebrate this momentous, bittersweet, life-affirming occasion, an event commonly known as high school graduation. This event commemorates the casting off of old ways and, as is sadly the case, old friends. Or so we thought. 09, we ain't working in no coal mine. That was my suggestion for the yearbook theme. It didn't even see its way to the first committee. What we really went with was the simple and slightly creepy complaint. So what does any of this have to do with the class of 09? And why do they deserve to be spoken about? It's really quite simple. The class of 09 is quite unique in that no one student fits perfectly into any sort of social mold. Students mingle freely with one another and feel no social stigma about pursuing diverse interests. Football players who score A's in AP Calculus, track runners who participate in school plays, a weekend that might consist of video games, working on a history project, and going to see Vampire Weekend at the Wellmont. We play together, but we also work well together. It is exactly that attitude of communalism that allows a senior who's never played varsity anything and didn't have a date for the prom to make the class speech at graduation. Since arriving in the Glenridge High School building in 2003, that's 7th grade, ladies and gentlemen, this class has always supported and helped each other in any way they could. From the first days, we had so much to contend with. Beards! There were beards everywhere. I had never seen a student with a beard before, I can tell you that much. And just look at me now. And the ladies had, anyway. We had to be that way. Self-sufficient, I mean, not bearded. For some reason, someone or something was always trying to bring us down. Somebody made the executive decision to just skip our 5th grade trip. You know, just skip it. We were one of the only classes to take the SAT essay, a grueling and completely subjective assessment of writing talent in a test that was way too long to begin with. And on our beautiful graduation day, we get to spend it in here. Isn't that fun? And somehow we always seem to be in school when everyone else is on a field trip. Our senior class trip to Dorney Park, by the way, did happen. It happened in sheets of ice cold rain, but believe me, people, it happened. We were all in the dinghy together, though. While all the other classes were racing around in their motorboats, we struggled to sail the SS Sinky ship into safe harbor. And you can't do that with a group of people without getting to know and respect each one of them. Shared hardship is often a great way to make friends. Who needs stupid old engines anyway? I can't promise that this metaphor is entirely accurate, but what I can promise you is that the rest of my speech won't just be a conceited conceit, likening our high school years to some obscure pop culture phenomenon. Maybe. So here's what I'm going to do instead. What I learned in high school these past 4 years is that Dan Boland, my best friend, would always be there to play music in the hallways on Friday afternoons. Doug Wagner, a.k.a. The Beehive, was a great guy to have around if you wanted to sing a song about Thomas for 3 weeks at a time without relenting. Scott Gimber would always be there with a smile and, "How's it going, guys?" Catherine Krause, was there if you ever needed someone to be nervous on stage with 10 seconds before the curtain went up on opening night of the spring musical. Hannah would always be there to bring in fresh pastries to class just about every week for no discernible reason. "Yeah, I just got up at 5 and started baking." Yeah. Andreas, the silent killer. His enthusiastic A's, O's, and your maybes, will be sorely missed. Thomas, who wrote an argument in my yearbook just so he could try to one-up me for the rest of my life. Thanks, Thomas. Steve Pitcher, who would play What is Love on our weekly McDonald's run, even if you were sick of that stupid song already. And my cousin Phil basically taught me pre-algebra in 5th grade, and also taught me that blood is thicker than balsamic vinegar, and that even if someone dares you to drink the latter, it may not be the best idea. From Ariel, I learned that knowing the worm and the Tom Bombadil doesn't mean you can dance, and I learned from every family and health class that I'm a bad person for not including more girls in this speech. Of course, we had the great faculty here to help us as well, like Mr. Heitman, who serves as much more than the school's disciplinarian. He's got layers. Like, literally, he's a Russian doll, where if you were to open him up, you'd find a smaller Mr. Heitman inside of him. Just like a smaller Mr. Heitman inside of that. Smaller one inside of that. As Mr. Dancho would say, forever and ever, amen. That's it for me. Jake Passapara stole all the good Mr. Heitman jokes like 3 years ago. So. We learned from Miss Lenny, the Biscuit Queen, that you can make anything out of whatever you have in the back of the fridge. Mr. Reitberger told us that when life gets you down, you can't just kick the cones. We also learned that sometimes in life, you just have to roll up your sleeves and dissect a fetal pig. And even though he never gave me that dinosaur party he promised, we all know Mr. Levine would have our backs if we were ever cornered by the notorious bio-pirates. In our AP Foreign Language courses, we learned that in a pinch, a good accent and flawless pronunciation can get you farther than, say, good grammar or verb tense agreement. I learned from Mr. Perna that CAD is not a place to draw armadillos, and Mr. Timpanero taught us the importance of getting your prints in on time. Ms. Pollock and Ms. Hackmeyer were always there to discuss writing and literature, and Mrs. Helser proved that Middle English is not a dead language. Mr. Dimmick, who I never even had, taught us that androids do not have souls and that the empire is still strong. Mr. Dancho's tests often served the dual purpose of brightening a cold autumn morning with his dry humor, as well as teaching us that Bert and Ernie did not discover the background radiation that permeates the universe into the far reaches of space, and I'm sure I would have a lot more to say about him if I had any sort of aptitude for science whatsoever. And if I had any sort of aptitude for math, I would talk about Mr. George and Ms. Tierney. Actually, I do have a pretty good one about Mr. George, though, who was there along with Mrs. Riley to help me when I was stricken mortally ill by a bad Philly cheesesteak, to bring me Gatorade and saltines throughout that long, painful evening. Oh, and Mr. Lagos was there, too. Yeah, I think so. But in that great hackneyed tradition of high school education, it's not just the students who do the learning. Like Miss Koenig, who learned that flummery is much more than a dessert. It's actually a synonym for twine. Yeah. Mrs. Backrack learned that we all really do appreciate her. Y Doña aprendió que Paco y yo solo hablemos en español para el examen de nunca después, y también que Andrés Hubler es súper famoso. Miss Abrahamson learned not to accept shenanigans in the classroom, and Mrs. Johnson learned the best way to deal with house centipedes, which is to ignore them. And, okay, maybe we didn't do as much teaching as I thought we did. So, come play with us. Parents, siblings, grandparents, second cousins twice removed, come play with us. Teachers, lunch ladies, principals, superintendent, come play with us. Geeks, jocks, gamers, preps, obscure subcultures that don't even have a name yet, come play with us. Musicians, athletes, scholars, writers, artists, come play with us. This is just one slogan out of many that were proposed. There's a reason why. It's because we are all those other suggestions for the yearbook theme. We are a group of students who can work together in spite of our differences, and that is something we will take with us when we leave this school. And like the forerunners, we will leave this place forever. But we will leave the vestiges of our presence here, relics to inspire hope and awe and wonder in all of those who will come after us. And they will bask in the glory that we will bequeath to them. Because we are 09, we are unified, and we sure as shoot ain't working in no coal mine. Thank you.